Hi everyone. Today we're going to learn how to first of all paint water droplets, and then we're going to use that information to help us to create this image. Now this is a sundew, which is an insectivorous plant. You can find this on the Brecon Beacons, amazingly, all different varieties of sundew. If you don't like this image, then you can use one of the others that I've sent you. This Fern frond, just about to open, is absolutely beautiful. And there are lots of images like this online. So just work your way through them and have a look and see which ones appeal to you. And we're just going to use the theory of painting water droplets. So you can draw circles. I'm going to do the water droplets on the left hand side here, and I'm going to do the sundew or the fern on the other side. Okay, so all you need to do is take clean water and any colour really. I mean, on the sundew, the water droplets, even though you can see the sort of projections here of the, I don't know what they are. These are the bits that send out the attractors for the insects, I think. The scent for the insect. So this is the area that we're going to concentrate on for now. So what you need to do first, I'm going to do them in blues. So take your palette and just wet down a couple of blue tones that you've got. And all we need to do is use one of the blues and just draw with your paintbrush. Use a detailed paintbrush like this. Just draw a circle. And, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect, and water droplets are all different shapes. You know, you can do a sort of bean shape and so on. Okay, so the first thing you do is you add the shadow that's being cast by the droplet. Okay, I'm going to zoom in a bit so that you can really see close up. I'm just using normal watercolour paper here. Okay, so shadow. Now normally when you paint a shadow you use alizarin crimson. Where am I here? There. Alizarin crimson and a little bit of ultramarine. And what you do is you get like a purple colour. And what you're supposed to do is then mix the colour of the object that you're painting. So in this case it's blue, so I would just add a little bit more blue. And there you have your shadow colour. So here we go, just underneath. We're imagining that the light is coming from up here. Okay. The sunlight, that is. And we're just going to put a small curve shape underneath our water droplet, like so. Now you can do the same thing in acrylic, but obviously you need to consider the lighter areas. I'll talk about that in a minute. Now, while it's still a little bit damp, take a damp brush and just lift off a little bit of the centre of that mark, okay? There we go. Now, the next thing to do is to add reflected shadow. So we're going to work on top of here where the shadows from, you've got to imagine that there are things in the room or in the garden that are reflecting on this little water droplet. So we've got a circle of light, and then we put some colour down either side, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take a damp clean brush and we're just going to smooth that in to our water droplet like that. Okay, so that's the next thing. Then we're just going to add a little bit more paint, and we're just going to blend. Now what you want to do is take the colour that you're lifting and work it in a curved line. So you might want to add a little bit more paint in maybe, but work it. Can you see I'm sort of working curve this way, curve that way, curve this way. I'm also working in the curve across the droplet like that, and then you can just blend those marks in like that. Okay, there we go. Now we could at this moment add some white in for a highlight and an illuminated area, and then we'll blend it, and then we're going to add dark spots. But the thing is, in watercolour we don't have white, so this area here is left white, but down here, so that just means it has no paint on it. So down here I want it to be white, so I'm just going to paint some water on, and then I'm just going to dab it once with my paper towel or sock, as I've got here, and it's covered in bits, so it's gone all over my paper. Okay, so you just lift off the lighter areas. Now if you just give me 1 second. Now if you're working in acrylic, then you just use white acrylic. If you're working with watercolour and you have painted over your white bits, I'm going to get rid of that, painted over your white bits, then what you can do is take some gouache. So I've got some gouache here, permanent white, and all you need to do is take some of that gouache. When I only need a small amount, I just dip my brush into the lid, and then you can restore any whites that you've lost by adding the white gouache back in. Now the white gouache is, some of you will know, is water mixable, which means that it does and can be removed from your work, whereas acrylic you won't be able to do that with acrylic. You can also blend it in. So if you wanted a slightly bigger highlight up here, you could extend your highlight like that, or even put a couple of little dots like that. Can you see? All right, and in the same way, the only difference between gouache and watercolour is that gouache is opaque, so you can't see through it, which is why it sits on top of the watercolour. So what we're going to do is we're just going to blend, using a slightly damp brush, that little bit of gouache in. I'm going to leave that bit because it's quite nice to see a bit of a hard area. And the other thing is, you could easily just put in a couple of marks just under here like that. Okay, just to give the shadow that's being projected by the water droplet a mark. Okay, now we need to darken things up a bit. So I'm going to take straight ultramarine, and I'm going to go in above here, oops, like that, above here, like that, underneath here, and underneath here. And that's just to give it a little bit more 3D feel. Again, just take a semi-dry brush and just blend carefully those marks into your painting. I know it seems like an awful lot of work, but it is really effective when you get these marks in the right place. And the more you do, the more the quicker you become. Okay, so there we go. I'm just going to blend that side in a bit like this. There we go. Okay, so you can see that's quite effective. Bit closer up. Have a go and do a few different shapes. All right, I'm just going to do this one again, just to show you again how we did it. So we've got that shadow colour, and that goes underneath like this. A bit darker than that, I think. There we go. Lift off the middle. This is if you're doing watercolour. Then we go to the top and we put a mark in at the top, all the way along the top edge. Leave a little shape. Then blend using a damp brush like that, just softening those edges. Then we can add white, but we're not going to do this in watercolour. And so the final bit is just to darken those edges up like that at the top and also underneath here like that. Okay, and there you have your water droplet. You can blend these bits in a bit more if you want to, bring them round. Okay, there. And again, like I said, if you've lost areas of white, you can pop them back in using this gouache like this, like that. Maybe a little bit there. Maybe you want a bit on the curves. Okay, so have a go. I'll send you a sheet that will make the anatomy of a water drop. Well, it'll give you some notes to follow. Okay. Okay, so the next thing to do is to actually paint this sundew. Really beautiful image. And I've just drawn like a wooden spoon shape here, just to guide me a little bit. First thing to do is to cover with a largish brush. You might as well use a biggish brush. We're going to cover the main body of sundew. And I'm going to mix up an orange. I've got a bit of dirty red on here. Which is going to help. So I'm going to mix up an orange. I've got an orange actually in my set. So if you've got an orange already, that's grand. But if you haven't, then use cadmium yellow and cadmium red and you'll get an orange. I'm going to mix up quite a lot, but wet, like that. Mainly because I want to use it as a wet in wet sort of background surface to work on. So the reason why I'm using a big brush is so that I can do this quickly, because if I don't do it quickly, then it's so warm in here today that it will dry out on me before I can get my additions of colour in. So the next colour I'm going to use is a bit of alizarin crimson, and I'm just going to put that around the edge. Now just random, like, you know, and remember that these paints always dry lighter. So just remember that. Just going to put a little bit here and there, and then I'm going to do the projections. I'm going to do them really loose like this with the tip of my brush. Some dark, some light, and that is just with addition of water. Oops, that's a bit thick, but don't matter. So practice these marks that you're making and try and get the ends as thin as you can. And also have some long, some short, some fat, some thin, some orange, some short ones that look like they're coming from behind, maybe like this. Okay, like that. The last thing to do before it dries out is to take some yellow, preferably a cadmium yellow, and just pop in some yellow up this top end here, maybe a bit down there, but this you can see is drying out already, so maybe you can add a little bit of water in just to get it moving. Okay, we're done. Okay, so the next thing to do is to take a smaller brush with a rounded edge, and we're going to put the ends on. Now the ends are going to be slightly lighter, so all we need to do is add water into our paint mix. I'm going to move this over a bit. Okay, and you just want to put a little oval shape on the end. Now I can see already that that's not thick enough, so I'm going to add some more pigment. I'm just going to put the ends on like this. Dip into your paint each time and have the little blobs at different angles, and press your brush, let the paint soak off the brush, and then lift it up, and you'll get these little, if you want to practice this again, go ahead, and you'll get different mark shapes according to how you lay this brush down. So you can see they're slightly different on the other side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the work around, and then I'm going to put the marks on. Have them at different angles. It makes for a more interesting composition. And have we got them all? No, there's one more there. I think that's it. Okay, so there we go. I'll lift this up a little. Right, so what's next? We might have to darken some of these up and lighten some of these up, and maybe add some white in onto this surface later. But the next stage will be to do the water droplets, but it needs to dry. So put it to one side, go and have a cup of tea, let it dry off. Okay, so now it's dry, we're going to draw on the little water droplets, and all I've got is a bit of cobalt or cerulean blue, and I'm just going to go around and draw the water droplets onto, like so. So little circles round each droplet like that. Okay, that's the first stage. Remember the stages was draw the shape on. Now the next stage was add cast shadow. So because this image is not casting the shadow onto anything, it's not sitting on a surface necessarily, we don't do that. But the next thing to do is to add a reflected shadow, and what you need to do is look closely at the droplet that you're painting and put in the darker areas like this. Okay, so go to the next one, or one that's similar, and just put in, and I'm just using the same colour, but it's just a little bit thicker. Okay, so build that up like that. Okay, and then the next bit is to just take a very thin version of that cobalt. So I'm just adding a little bit of water, and I'm just going to paint over carefully over that bit. So wherever there's a lighter tone, but not where the whites are. Okay, leave the whites empty. And then the last thing to do is just to let that dry off, and then you take some gouache, okay, and you mix some water into your gouache so it flows. It's a nice creamy consistency. And then we're going to put these are the ones I did earlier, and they're dry. Okay, so we're going to put the whites on top. So there's a white mark. Look carefully again, and you need a fine brush for this. You need to be accurate. And then there's a mark there, and then there's a mark just over the top. Can you see like that? It's amazing what that mark does. The mark that's actually on top of the head of the projection. So again, look carefully. There's a mark that goes there, but then it sort of disappears around where the arm is. There's a dot there, and then there's a white mark there. Okay, so I'm going to carry on. I'm going to do this one, and then I'm just going to do them all. This one here goes from white into light blue, so I'm just going to take a little bit of blue, put it there, and just blend it a bit back into the white, back up to the top of the water droplet, goes down around the little arm, and then you've got a mark there. Now you can see that the marks move, the reflection marks move, so make sure you look really closely about at what you're painting. Okay, so let me do this one. So again, the mark goes above here. Don't worry if you don't get all of these blobs done. It's really not important. You can also put some little marks onto the projections. That's just the dew really on the arms as well as on the heads of these projections. Okay, I'll do those. I'll do it on time lapse so you don't have to sit and watch me do them all. And then we'll come back and I will show you how to just finish the central part. Okay, so there we have more or less the finished piece. As you can see, I went around and I did all, you watched me do all the little water blobs, and I also added small amounts of white on some of the projections. I darkened some to give them a shadow. You can darken a few more if you like. I also added a variety of colours of white. So I've got like a yellowy white, an orangey white, a pinky white and a white, and I've just highlighted. I could put a little bit more of that on there, I think. And in hindsight, I think I should have put extra strong colour here. The other thing you can do is to paint the background. So before you do any of this, you can paint the background that sort of greeny yellowy colour and then put everything else on top. Okay, and what that'll give you is a little bit of colour coming through these water droplets. Okay, but maybe you fancy just doing it this way to start with, and then once you've got one more or less right, then you can move over and try another one and maybe put this lovely background in as well. That's so nice. Okay, I hope you enjoy. Let me know how you get on, send me some pictures, and go out and observe the real thing. And the next time there's a damp night and there's a lot of water droplets on the plants, maybe take some photographs for yourself. You know, you don't have to do these sundews and these ferns. You could do an open daisy or even a buttercup, or just some leaves with the water droplets on. There's some fantastic photographs on Google search, and I use Pinterest a lot. So go and search out the images that you want to use and just use the techniques that I have given you. Okay, that's all for now, and I will see you next week. Bye.